Captain Marcus Kane stood motionless beside the ornate golden throne, his steel-gray eyes scanning the opulent throne room as Queen Isabella reviewed diplomatic correspondence. The afternoon sunlight streamed through towering stained-glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the marble floor where Princess Victoria paced restlessly near the grand entrance. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Victoria declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I should be in Paris with my friends, not trapped in this dusty old palace with these toy soldiers." Kane's expression remained unchanged, though his peripheral vision tracked every movement the 17-year-old princess made. Her designer heels clicked against the floor in an irritating rhythm that had persisted for the past 20 minutes. "Your Highness," Queen Isabella said without looking up from her papers, "the security briefing clearly stated that travel is restricted this week. There have been credible threats." Victoria spun around, her emerald dress swirling dramatically. "Threats? Please. What could possibly happen in this boring kingdom? These guards just want to feel important." She gestured dismissively toward Kane. "Look at him, standing there like a statue pretending he's some kind of elite protector." Kane's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His years of training had prepared him for many scenarios, but the constant disrespect from the princess tested his patience in ways enemy fire never had. "Captain Kane has served this family with distinction for 8 years, Queen Isabella replied, finally raising her eyes. "Perhaps you should show more respect for those who risk their lives for your safety." Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Risk their lives? For what? Opening car doors and looking stern? I bet he's never even been in a real fight. These palace guards are just for show, Mother. Expensive decoration." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kane had survived 3 assassination attempts, countless security breaches, and had personally saved the Queen's life twice in the past 5 years. Yet he remained silent, his duty clear. "I could walk out of this palace right now," Victoria continued, her voice rising with defiance. "And none of these so-called protectors could stop me. They're too worried about protocol and proper procedure to actually do anything meaningful." Queen Isabella set down her papers, her expression growing stern. "Victoria, that's enough." "Is it, though?" Victoria took a step closer to Kane, studying his impassive face. "I wonder what it takes to make the great Captain Kane actually react to something. Does anything penetrate that perfect military facade?" Kane's breathing remained steady, but his eyes shifted slightly to monitor the princess's proximity. Every instinct screamed at him to maintain professional distance, yet his primary duty was protection, even from family members who seemed determined to create problems. "You know what I think?" Victoria said, circling Kane like a predator. "I think you're all afraid. Afraid to make real decisions. Afraid to break your precious rules. When actual danger comes, you'll freeze up because you've spent so long following orders instead of thinking for yourselves." The throne room fell silent, except for the distant sound of footsteps in the corridor beyond. Kane's enhanced hearing picked up something else, something that made his blood run cold. Multiple sets of boots moving with tactical precision toward their location. "Princess," Kane said quietly, breaking his silence for the first time in an hour. Victoria's eyes widened with surprise. "Finally, the statue speaks. What profound wisdom do you have to share, Captain?" Kane's hand moved toward his sidearm with practiced smoothness. "Step behind the throne. Now." "Excuse me?" Victoria's voice carried a mixture of shock and indignation. "You don't give me orders. I don't take commands from." The throne room doors exploded inward with a deafening crash. Armed figures in black tactical gear poured through the entrance, their weapons raised and ready. Kane's training kicked in instantly, his body moving before his conscious mind could process the threat fully. "Get down!" he roared, lunging toward Queen Isabella while drawing his weapon in one fluid motion. Victoria stood frozen in the center of the room, her earlier bravado evaporating as the reality of genuine danger crashed over her like a cold wave. The mocking smile disappeared from her face, replaced by wide-eyed terror as she realized her childish games had just collided with lethal reality. Kane positioned himself between the intruders and the royal family, his weapon trained on the lead attacker. This was the moment every guard trained for but hoped would never come. The princess's words about frozen fear and following orders echoed in his mind as he prepared to prove exactly what dedication and sacrifice truly meant. The first gunshot shattered the afternoon silence like breaking glass. Kane moved with fluid precision that spoke of countless hours of training and real-world experience. His first shot dropped the lead intruder before the man could fully raise his assault rifle. The captain rolled behind a marble pillar as return fire chipped stone fragments around his position. "Isabella, stay down!" Kane commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. The queen had already taken cover behind the massive throne, her diplomatic papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Princess Victoria remained standing in the open, her body rigid with shock as bullets whistled past her position. Kane's tactical assessment registered the immediate problem. The princess was directly in the line of fire, frozen by the very fear she had mocked moments earlier. Two more intruders advanced through the doorway, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't common criminals or protesters. Their equipment and tactics suggested military training, possibly mercenaries hired for this specific operation. Kane broke from cover, sprinting toward Victoria while firing controlled bursts at the advancing attackers. His shots forced them to seek defensive positions behind ornate furniture and decorative columns. One intruder stumbled, crimson spreading across his tactical vest, but continued moving. "Princess, move!" Kane shouted, reaching Victoria's position just as automated gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Kane tackled the princess to the ground, his body shielding her from the incoming rounds that shattered priceless artifacts and paintings around them. Victoria's designer dress tore against the rough marble as they slid behind an overturned mahogany table. I can't breathe," Victoria gasped, her face pale with terror. The arrogant young woman from minutes earlier had vanished, replaced by a frightened girl who suddenly understood the weight of real danger. "Focus on my voice," Kane said, reloading his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Keep your head down and stay behind me. No matter what happens, do not move from this position." The sound of approaching footsteps indicated more intruders entering the throne room. Kane's trained ear calculated at least 6 hostiles, possibly more. His ammunition was limited, and backup wouldn't arrive for several minutes. The odds weren't favorable, but his duty remained absolute. One attacker attempted to flank their position, moving along the eastern wall. Kane tracked the movement through peripheral vision while maintaining cover. The intruder raised his weapon, aiming directly at the princess's exposed position. Kane's response was instantaneous. He pivoted from behind their cover, his weapon already trained on the target. The shot echoed through the chamber, and the attacker crumpled to the floor, his rifle clattering across the marble. "How many are there?" Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible above the gunfire. "Doesn't matter," Kane replied, scanning for the next threat. "My job is to keep you and your mother alive. Everything else is secondary." Queen Isabella called out from behind the throne, her voice strained but controlled. "Marcus? The panic room protocols?" Kane shook his head grimly. "Too many hostiles between us and the secure corridor. We hold this position until backup arrives." 2 intruders attempted a coordinated assault from opposite sides of the room. Kane recognized the tactic immediately. Classic pincer movement designed to overwhelm a single defender through simultaneous pressure from multiple angles. Instead of waiting for their attack, Kane took the initiative. He rolled left while firing at the first attacker, then immediately shifted right to engage the second threat. Both intruders dropped, but not before their return fire forced Kane to seek new cover. Victoria watched in stunned silence as the man she had ridiculed demonstrated the lethal competence she had questioned. Every movement was calculated, every shot precise. This wasn't the decorative guard she had mocked, but a highly trained professional operating at the peak of his abilities. Kane's tactical radio crackled with static. "Captain, this is Sergeant Martinez. We're 3 minutes out. What's your situation?" 6 hostiles down. Unknown number remaining," Kane responded quickly. "Royal family secure but pinned down in the throne room." Another wave of attackers pressed their assault, this time using smoke grenades to obscure their advance. Kane adjusted his strategy, relying on sound and movement patterns rather than visual confirmation. His years of experience had prepared him for exactly this scenario. The smoke began clearing as Queen Isabella's voice cut through the diminishing gunfire. "Victoria, are you injured?" Princess Victoria looked down at herself with surprise, as if suddenly remembering her own existence. "No, Captain Kane." She turned toward the man who had just saved her life repeatedly. "I'm sorry. Kane held up a hand for silence, his attention focused on potential remaining threats. The throne room had fallen quiet except for the distant sound of approaching reinforcements. His eyes swept the chamber methodically, weapon ready for any final surprises. The immediate danger had passed, but the impact of these moments would reshape everything the royal family thought they knew about protection, duty, and the people who silently guard their lives. The throne room remained eerily quiet as Sergeant Martinez and his tactical team swept through the debris-strewn chamber. Kane maintained his protective stance over Princess Victoria, his weapon still drawn despite the apparent end of immediate threats. "Area secure, Captain," Martinez reported, his voice echoing in the vast space. 8 hostiles down, no survivors for interrogation. We found their entry point through the service tunnels. This was a professional operation. Kane finally allowed himself to breathe normally, though his eyes continued scanning for potential secondary threats. "Casualties on our side? 2 guards wounded in the outer corridors. Nothing fatal. Medical teams are en route," Martinez replied while directing his men to establish a secure perimeter. Queen Isabella emerged from behind the throne, her usually pristine appearance disheveled, but her composure intact. Years of royal training had prepared her for crisis management, though nothing quite like this direct assault on the heart of their kingdom. "Victoria?" she said softly, approaching her daughter who remained crouched behind the overturned table. Princess Victoria looked up at her mother with eyes that held a depth of understanding that hadn't existed an hour earlier. The transformation from spoiled teenager to sobered young woman was startling in its completeness. "I could have gotten us all killed," Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible. "My stupid games, my arrogance. Captain Kane could have died protecting me after everything I said to him." Kane holstered his weapon and extended his hand to help the princess stand. "Your Highness, training and experience exist precisely for moments like this. No apologies are necessary." Victoria accepted his assistance, rising unsteadily to her feet. Her torn designer dress and disheveled appearance seemed insignificant compared to the weight of realization settling over her features. "But they are necessary," Victoria said, turning to face Kane directly. "I called you decoration. I said you were afraid to make real decisions. I questioned your courage while you were prepared to die for people who were someone who treated you with such disrespect." The princess's voice broke slightly on the last words, genuine remorse replacing her earlier arrogance. Queen Isabella watched this exchange with mixed emotions, recognizing that her daughter was experiencing a fundamental shift in perspective. Kane's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Your Highness, my oath wasn't conditional on personal treatment. Protection of the royal family is an honor, regardless of circumstances." "That makes it worse," Victoria replied, shaking her head. "You maintained your duty and dignity while I acted like a petulant child. I have no excuse for my behavior." Sergeant Martinez approached with preliminary intelligence reports. "Captain, we've identified the attackers. Professional mercenaries, likely hired by external interests seeking to destabilize the kingdom. This wasn't random violence. The implications hung heavy in the air. Someone had specifically targeted the royal family, and today's attack might be only the beginning of a larger threat." Kane processed this information while maintaining his protective positioning near both royal family members. "What does this mean for our security protocols?" Queen Isabella asked, though her tone suggested she already understood the answer. "Complete revision of our defensive strategies," Kane replied. "No more public appearances without enhanced protection. The palace itself needs additional fortification. And..." He paused, glancing at Princess Victoria. "Everyone must take security briefings seriously." Victoria nodded emphatically. "I understand. No more complaints about restricted travel or security measures. I'll follow every protocol without question." Kane studied the young woman before him, recognizing that genuine change often emerged from moments of profound crisis. The princess who had mocked palace security an hour earlier had witnessed firsthand what protection actually meant and what guards were willing to sacrifice to provide it. "Your Highness," Kane said carefully, "understanding the reasoning behind security measures is more important than blind compliance. Today demonstrated why we take certain precautions. Your safety isn't just about personal protection. It's about national stability." Queen Isabella placed a protective arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Marcus is right. This attack wasn't just about harming our family. It was about creating chaos in our kingdom. Every security measure exists to protect not just us, but our people." Victoria absorbed these words, her newfound maturity evident in her focused attention. The frivolous concerns that had dominated her thoughts earlier seemed absurd in light of the day's events. "I want to learn," Victoria said suddenly, "about security, about real threats, about what you and your team actually do to keep us safe. I've been ignorant for too long." Kane exchanged a meaningful glance with Queen Isabella, who nodded her approval. "That can be arranged, Your Highness. Understanding our methods will help you make better decisions about your own safety." The throne room cleanup continued around them, but the most important transformation had already occurred in the space between recognition and respect, between arrogance and appreciation for those who serve with quiet dedication. Medical personnel arrived to conduct mandatory health evaluations, while intelligence analysts began their investigation into the attack's origins. Kane coordinated these efforts while maintaining his protective duties, demonstrating the multifaceted nature of Royal Guard responsibilities. Princess Victoria observed every interaction, finally seeing the complex web of security, intelligence, and protection that surrounded her daily life. The decorative guards she had dismissed were revealed as highly trained professionals managing threats she had never imagined. "Captain Kane," Victoria said as the immediate crisis response wound down, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my life, and I owe you the respect I should have shown from the beginning." Kane's response carried the weight of professional experience and personal dignity. "Your Highness, respect earned through crisis is often the most genuine. Today's events were unfortunate, but your understanding of our mission is worth something." Queen Isabella watched this exchange with quiet pride, recognizing that both her daughter and her head of security had demonstrated remarkable character under extreme pressure. The attack had revealed not just vulnerabilities in their physical security, but strengths in their human connections. "Marcus," Queen Isabella said formally, "I want a complete security briefing tomorrow morning. Victoria will attend, and she'll participate in all relevant training exercises moving forward." Victoria straightened, accepting this responsibility with newfound seriousness. "I'll be ready, Mother. And Captain Kane, thank you for protecting me despite my behavior. I won't forget what real courage looks like." The afternoon sun still streamed through the damaged stained glass windows, but everything else in the throne room had changed permanently. Duty, respect, and understanding had emerged from violence and fear, creating bonds that would strengthen their kingdom's security in ways no amount of technology or training alone could achieve. Kane stood at his familiar position beside the throne, but his relationship with the royal family had evolved beyond mere professional obligation into something approaching mutual respect and trust. 3 weeks after the attack, Princess Victoria entered the palace security briefing room with determined stride and focused attention that would have been unrecognizable to anyone who had known her before the throne room incident. Her designer clothes had been replaced with practical attire suitable for tactical training exercises. Captain Kane stood before a detailed intelligence board displaying threat assessments, communication intercepts, and security protocol modifications implemented since the attack. Victoria took her assigned seat without complaint or commentary, her notepad ready for detailed documentation. "The investigation has revealed concerning intelligence about the mercenary group," Kane began, his presentation crisp and professional. "They were advanced scouts for a larger operation targeting multiple royal families across Europe. Our successful defense disrupted their timeline, but didn't eliminate the underlying threat." Queen Isabella leaned forward, her expression grave. "How many other kingdoms are at risk?" 7 confirmed targets, 3 additional suspected, Kane replied. "Intelligence agencies across the continent are coordinating defensive measures, but each royal family must strengthen their individual security protocols." "Captain, what specific changes have we implemented here?" I want to understand how my previous behavior might have compromised our defenses. Kane paused, recognizing the genuine desire for knowledge in the princess's question. Her transformation from dismissive teenager to engaged security partner had been remarkable, though he remained cautious about her long-term commitment to these new attitudes. Your previous public statements about palace security were monitored by hostile intelligence services, Kane explained carefully. Comments suggesting our guards were ineffective or that security measures were excessive provided valuable tactical information to potential attackers. The weight of this revelation settled over Victoria's features like a shadow. Her casual mockery hadn't just been disrespectful, it had actively endangered everyone she cared about by broadcasting defensive weaknesses to actual enemies. I fed information to people who wanted to kill my family, Victoria said quietly, the full implications of her actions finally becoming clear. My jokes and complaints were intelligence gathering for our enemies. Inadvertently, yes, Kane confirmed. Social media posts, public comments, and casual conversations are all monitored by groups seeking vulnerabilities. Every word a royal family member speaks publicly becomes part of someone's intelligence file. Queen Isabella reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand supportively. Victoria, you couldn't have known the full implications of your words. The important thing is learning from this experience. Victoria shook her head firmly. But I should have known. Captain Kane tried to maintain professional behavior while I essentially broadcast our defensive capabilities to the world. No wonder he looked frustrated when I kept pushing boundaries. Kane's expression softened slightly. Your Highness, learning operational security is part of growing into royal responsibilities. Few people understand these concepts without proper briefing. Then, brief me properly. Victoria replied with determination. I want to understand everything. Threat assessment procedures, communication protocols, defensive positioning, escape routes, emergency procedures, all of it. The request surprised Kane, who had expected the princess's security interest to fade as the immediate crisis became memory. Instead, her engagement seemed to be deepening with each briefing session. That level of security education typically requires months of intensive training, Kane warned. The information could be overwhelming for someone without military or intelligence background. Victoria's response carried conviction that impressed both Kane and her mother. Captain, 3 weeks ago I was a liability to everyone around me because of my ignorance. I refuse to remain a weak link in our security chain. Whatever training is necessary, I'll complete it. Queen Isabella smiled with evident pride. Marcus, prepare a comprehensive security education program for Victoria. She's demonstrated the maturity to handle classified information responsibly. Over the following hour, Kane outlined a training curriculum covering threat recognition, communication security, behavioral awareness, emergency response protocols, and basic defensive techniques. Victoria absorbed every detail with focused attention that marked her complete departure from her previous dismissive attitude. There's one more element we need to address, Kane said toward the end of the briefing. Public perception management. Your transformation from security skeptic to security advocate could itself become a valuable intelligence asset if handled properly. Victoria looked puzzled. How so? Hostile groups expect royal family members to maintain predictable behavioral patterns, Kane explained. Your genuine understanding of security concerns could help identify and counter future threats if you're willing to occasionally play a public role that appears less informed than you actually are. The complexity of this concept intrigued Victoria. You mean I could help catch potential attackers by appearing to be the same careless person I used to be? Under controlled circumstances, with extensive preparation and backup, Kane confirmed, but only if you're genuinely committed to long-term security training. This type of operation requires someone who thoroughly understands the risks involved. Victoria's eyes lit up with purpose she had never felt before. I want to help protect our kingdom and our family. If my previous behavior created vulnerabilities, I want to use similar tactics to create advantages. Kane exchanged a meaningful look with Queen Isabella, who nodded her approval for this ambitious security partnership. The young woman requesting advanced tactical training bore no resemblance to the spoiled princess who had mocked royal guards just weeks earlier. Very well, Your Highness, Kane said formally. We'll begin advanced security training tomorrow morning. Fair warning, This curriculum is designed for professional operatives. It will be challenging. Victoria stood and extended her hand to Kane with genuine respect. Captain, I'm ready for the challenge. Thank you for protecting me when I didn't deserve protection, and for trusting me with this opportunity to contribute meaningfully to our security. Kane shook her hand, recognizing that the frivolous princess had truly evolved into a potential asset for their kingdom's defense. The attack that had threatened their lives had ultimately strengthened their resolve and capabilities in ways no peaceful transition could have achieved. 6 months later, Princess Victoria moved through the annual diplomatic reception with grace and apparent casualness that masked her heightened awareness of every guest, every conversation, and every security professional positioned throughout the elegant ballroom. Kane watched from his traditional position near the throne, his trained eye noting how naturally Victoria had absorbed tactical awareness techniques. She engaged in seemingly frivolous conversation while actually conducting sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations that would have impressed seasoned operatives. Ambassador Laurent seems particularly interested in our eastern border security measures, Victoria mentioned quietly as she passed Kane's position during a natural movement through the crowd. Kane acknowledged her observation with the slightest nod. The French diplomat had indeed been probing for information about defensive installations, using casual dinner conversation to extract classified details from other guests. Victoria's recognition of this social intelligence gathering demonstrated her remarkable development. Queen Isabella approached their position, her own awareness of the evening's undercurrents evident in her subtle positioning. Marcus, how many potential issues have been identified tonight? 3 confirmed intelligence operatives, 2 suspicious diplomatic attachés, and 1 photographer whose equipment suggests capabilities beyond standard media coverage, Kane replied quietly. Princess Victoria has identified additional concerns that warrant investigation. The Queen's pride in her daughter's evolution was evident, despite her composed expression. 6 months of intensive security training had not only educated Victoria about protective protocols, but had genuinely engaged her intellectual curiosity about international relations and strategic thinking. Your Highness, Kane said as Victoria returned from another circuit of the ballroom. The Romanian cultural minister's assistant has been photographing structural details rather than social moments. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. I noticed. She's also been asking staff members about service tunnel locations under the pretense of wanting to avoid crowds. Should we modify her access to sensitive areas? Kane's assessment and Victoria's observations aligned perfectly, demonstrating the effectiveness of their collaborative approach to security analysis. The princess, who had once been their greatest liability, had become a valuable intelligence asset. I'll have Sergeant Martinez adjust the security perimeter, Kane decided. Your social positioning provides intelligence opportunities that traditional security personnel can't access. Victoria accepted this responsibility with the seriousness it deserved. Her unique position allowed her to engage with potential threats in ways that uniformed guards could never achieve, while her comprehensive training enabled her to recognize dangers that might escape notice in casual social settings. The evening progressed smoothly, but Kane remained alert to the subtle dynamics Victoria continued to monitor. Her development from security liability to protective asset had exceeded his most optimistic expectations, creating capabilities that strengthened their overall defensive strategy. As the reception wound down, Victoria approached Kane with her final observations. Captain, I've learned more about potential threats in 6 hours of diplomatic conversation than I thought possible. This kind of intelligence gathering could be incredibly valuable for preventing future attacks. Kane nodded approvingly. How it could have slipped outside of our perimeter is. Your Highness, your contribution tonight demonstrates why security education was worthwhile. Understanding threats allows you to help prevent them rather than inadvertently supporting them. Queen Isabella joined their discreet assessment conference, her own observations adding another layer of strategic thinking. Victoria, your transformation has been remarkable, but more importantly, it's been genuine. You understand what protection means now. Victoria's response carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. I understand what service means, Mother. Captain Kane and his team sacrifice personal comfort and safety for our protection every day. Contributing to our security rather than undermining it feels like the least I can do. Kane recognized the fundamental shift in Victoria's perspective, from entitled recipient of protection to active participant in security efforts. This evolution had strengthened their entire defensive capability, while creating mutual respect that enhanced operational effectiveness. "Your Highness," Kane said formally, "your development has exceeded all training expectations. You've become a genuine asset to our kingdom's security." Victoria smiled, but her expression remained serious. "Captain, 6 months ago I nearly got us all killed through ignorance and arrogance. Today I helped identify potential threats before they could develop into actual danger. That transformation was only possible because you protected me despite my behavior, and then trusted me with education despite my past mistakes." The three of them stood in comfortable understanding, united by shared experiences that had forged professional respect into something approaching genuine partnership. The attack that had threatened their lives had ultimately created bonds and capabilities that made their kingdom more secure than ever before. Kane maintained his protective stance, but his role had evolved beyond simple guard duty to strategic advisor and collaborative partner. Victoria had earned her place in their security operations through dedication and genuine transformation that honored both her position and the people who served to protect it. The evening's successful intelligence gathering had demonstrated that strength emerged not just from weapons and training, but from understanding, respect, and shared commitment to protecting what mattered most. As the ballroom emptied and normal palace security protocols resumed, Kane reflected on the remarkable journey that had transformed a spoiled princess into a sophisticated security asset. The path from mockery to mutual respect had required crisis, growth, and genuine commitment from everyone involved. Princess Victoria had learned that true protection required more than bodyguards and barriers. It demanded understanding, preparation, and active participation from those being protected. Kane had discovered that the most effective security emerged from partnership rather than mere professional obligation. Together, they had created something stronger than traditional royal protection, built on respect earned through crisis and maintained through continued excellence.